Rome was falling apart. Assassins had just murdered Julius Caesar. The Republic was in chaos. Then came Augustus, Caesar's heir. Smart, patient, deadly. He didn't seize power overnight. He earned it step by step until no one could stop him. He became Rome's first emperor. Started the Pax Romana, 200 years of peace, and transformed the city of bricks into a city of marble, behind the calm, ruthless control. He crushed rivals, rewrote laws, and ruled until the day he died. They called him Augustus. But history remembers him as the man who built an empire. It's me. This is my channel, and this is the story of Augustus, Part 1, The Rise of the First Emperor. When Gaius Octavius was born, the Roman Republic was in its infancy. Rome was a small village of farmers and shepherds. Legend said that all of Italy would one day fall under its rule. But at that point, Rome wasn't even a province, it wasn't even free. It was ruled by kings from outside Italy. Octavius was born a Roman citizen, but he was a second-class citizen. That wouldn't change until his great-uncle, Julius Caesar, took power, but Caesar's rise to power also led to his downfall. When he was assassinated, Octavius was in his early 20s, and his father had just died. He inherited a noble title, but not much else. Yet almost immediately, his uncle's will named him Caesar's heir, granting him the title Caesar. At the time, that meant nothing. In fact, if Octavian wanted to claim the title, he'd have to fight for it. Rival senators were already maneuvering for power. Octavian had just returned from conquering Egypt. Cleopatra and Mark Antony were now running Rome together. Marcus Agrippa, one of Caesar's generals, was leading the opposition. Octavian didn't stand a chance, so he did what any reasonable young man would do. He made nice with the most powerful people in Rome and asked them for money. Lots of money. He married the daughter of Cleopatra and Antony, then raised an army and fought against Agrippa. It went about as well as you'd expect. Octavian lost. In fact, he lost so badly that he had to escape Rome without a single soldier to his name. Back in his villa, Octavian realized he was in trouble. His allies were abandoning him. His enemies were hunting him. His lover had just given birth to twins. He needed money, soldiers, anything to turn the tide. So he did something desperate. He marched back to Rome, broke into the temple of Janus, a god of war, and took the sacred implements inside. He declared war on Antony and Cleopatra. They'd taken his inheritance. Now he was taking theirs. That was all the excuse he needed. The Senate declared war on Antony and Cleopatra and gave Octavian command of the army. Suddenly he was rich, he was powerful, he was loved. As he marched on Antony and Cleopatra, Octavian won battle after battle. Soon he stood before the gates of Alexandria. Inside, Cleopatra waited. She may have been the most famous woman in the world, but she was desperate. Her lover, Mark Antony, had gone mad. He gambled away half of Egypt to one of Octavian's generals. If Octavian took Alexandria, Antony would have nothing left to give, so Cleopatra struck a deal. If Octavian let her keep her fortune, she'd marry him. Of course, Then they sailed to Athens where they got married. Now that Antony and Cleopatra were out of the picture, it was time for Octavian to fix Rome. He reformed the courts, reformed the treasury, even reformed the army. But there were still those who resented Caesar's rise to power, like Sextus Pompey, the son of one of Caesar's old enemies. He led a fleet of ships across the Mediterranean, pillaging on Roman shipping lanes. He was a threat to Rome, but worse, he was a threat to Octavian's power, and that couldn't stand. Octavian assembled a navy, led by Agrippa, the very general who had defeated him years earlier. They met off the coast of Mylae, and after 2 days of fighting, Pompey's fleet was destroyed. Not only was Sextus Pompey killed, but the seas were clear for trade once more. Once again, Octavian had proven himself to be a brilliant general. But now there was another threat. This time it wasn't a rival general or a foreign king. It was a civil war. Rome had expanded across the Mediterranean, but that hadn't brought more prosperity. It had brought more corruption, more poverty, more violence, and the people were tired of it. They wanted a strong leader who could restore order to their lives. But when Octavian traveled around the Republic, meeting with the people, hearing their concerns, their problems, he didn't see a divided people. He saw a divided government. The Senate wasn't to blame. The generals weren't to blame. Neither were the people. It was him. He was the problem. He spent so much time defeating his rivals, crushing his enemies, that he'd ignored the Republic. He'd become everything his uncle Julius Caesar had been before him, a distant, uncaring ruler. Octavian knew he could fix it. He just needed a better way to rule. He started with the army. Soldiers had followed him for years, through victory and defeat. But now he wanted them to follow him back to the fields. As farmers, he disbanded his legions and sent the soldiers home to plant crops, build roads and aqueducts. To rebuild the foundations of Rome, he refocused the military, making it smaller, leaner, but also giving it a permanent standing army. He paid the soldiers better, treated them better. And suddenly the Republic had an army it could count on. Next, he fixed the courts. Under Caesar, the courts had been controlled by party loyalists. Now they were run by jurists, lawyers who knew the law. He reformed the calendar, reorganized local governments, even hired architects to design new public buildings. All the while, he kept an eye on the money. Octavian understood that to be truly wealthy, a nation needed to be efficient. So he created an accounting office to collect taxes and keep track of the revenue. The result was astonishing. In 3 years, the government went from owing millions to having a $600 million surplus. Yet for all this work, Octavian still wasn't popular. People wanted a strong leader. Instead, he was an efficient manager. He was good with numbers, and not so good with people. Still, he was able to get things done, like land reform. The poor were leaving the city, abandoning their farms to grow food in the countryside. So Octavian bought up large plots of land and sold them to poor citizens. Soon they were growing wheat, vegetables, olives. Suddenly they could feed themselves and their families without going to the markets. In a few short years, Octavian went from being a hated leader to being a beloved one. But before anyone could declare him king, he left Rome. He'd fallen in love with a woman named Livia. She was beautiful, she was intelligent, and she was married. Octavian wasn't deterred. He pursued her relentlessly, wrote her poetry, courted her friends and family, until finally she agreed to leave her husband and be with him. They married, and soon they set sail for the east. There, on the island of Delos, Octavian made a startling announcement. He would give up his title of Augustus and live as a private citizen. After 14 years of war, 14 years of bloodshed, he was done. Now he wanted to live a simple life. Sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? Well, fairy tales don't usually have villains. And this one had one big villain, a former ally, a former friend, Marcus Agrippa. He'd helped Octavian become powerful. Now he was trying to take that power away. He was planning to assassinate Octavian, steal his throne, and marry Octavian's widow. Luckily, Octavian caught wind of the plot, arrested Agrippa, and executed him. From there, Octavian seized even more power for himself, becoming the first emperor of Rome. He ruled the entire Mediterranean. He reformed the government, the military, the economy. He reorganized entire cities. And yet he was never satisfied. There was always more to do, more power to grab. He didn't want to be Augustus, the greatest emperor Rome had ever seen. He wanted to be Augustus, the greatest emperor Rome would ever see. Stay tuned for more stories of powerful leaders who changed the world, including the next chapter in the series, The Downfall of an Empire. See you next time.